Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our webinar. Terry, it's all yours.
Sarah, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for being here today. I really appreciate it. I know it's a busy time of the year, and so, like I said, I appreciate you guys taking a few minutes of your time out of your busy day to join us for this webinar. I'll just a brief housekeeping item, if you will. What I'd like to do today is just go through the webinar fully. Without taking questions, and then when we get done, we can come back and either, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat while I'm working, or just or while I'm talking, or just go ahead and write them down, and then we'll come back and have a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. This webinar started because obviously we're in some real uncertain economic times. And as I talk to literally hundreds and hundreds of business sellers every year, over the last 6 months, as the interest rates have continued to rise and inflation continued to rise, I was getting a lot of questions from both sellers and buyers about the market and about what's going to happen, and what does this mean for a business owner who is close to at least contemplating selling their business. So we thought we'd put together just some thoughts and to hopefully to give you guys really to put your mind at ease, because as you're going to see throughout the course of this presentation, we're in some uncertain times, but it doesn't mean bad news necessarily for sellers. And really, there's some opportunities that sellers, I think, can take advantage of to still really do very well if you decide to sell your business in the near future during a recessionary period. So here we go. We're going to go through, the real estate markets as we go through the changes, and we'll understand the markets to help you guys understand the markets better. And then, like I said, while there are some challenges, there's some really good news at the end of the rainbow as far as business sellers at this point in time. Okay, I wanted to just start with just a quick refresh. When we talk about the value of your business, I get this question a lot. I'll say, hey, your business is worth this, and they'll go, well, what does that include? Does that include my equipment? Does that include this? Does that include that? So typically when we do evaluation, or I should say a broker opinion of price on a business, especially in the appliance repair industry, what we're including in that is your equipment, your inventory, your trucks, and we're also including any other tangible assets that would belong in the category of either furniture, fixtures, or equipment. We're also including the intangible assets. So that's your customer list, your employees. I mean, buyers, when they're buying a business, they want that human capital, right? It's going to include your vendor relationships, your contracts, your capabilities, your technology, whatever computer system you're running, okay? All of those items are included in the value of the sale of the business. What's not included is what you already have in terms of cash. So whatever cash you have in the bank, and whatever accounts receivable that you may have, whatever people owe you, that'll be yours. But you also will have to pay off your debts. Your liabilities are yours. Okay. But one of the things that I wanted to, end the slide with is to tell you, when you go to sell your business, what buyers are really looking to buy is a turnkey operation on day one. Okay, when the first day they take ownership of the business, they want to be able to make money. So, I always have to tell sellers who call me and go, well, okay, I want to sell the business, but I'm not going to include my vans, and I'm not going to include my tax, because I'm going to move those over to a different business. That business is very difficult to sell because buyers aren't looking for businesses where they have to put in extra capital or do extra work on day one and can't make money. They're looking to buy a turnkey enterprise on day one. So just quick review. I know some of you may have joined me before in some of these talks, whether it be live at ASTI or on the webinars that Sarah and I have done over the years with United Servicers. But when it comes to putting a price on a business, many different methodologies exist, and each methodology has the pros and cons. Some of the methodologies you may have heard include asset-based, where we just basically, look and see what your assets are, with your trucks, your equipment, your inventory. There's a gross sales base, and that methodology says, hey, if your annual sales are $500,000, your business is worth 30% of that, or $150,000. There's the comparison based. And I get this a lot too from sellers who go, well, I think my business is worth this because Joe has a similar business and he sold his for this. Well, a couple of things about Joe. Number one is Joe probably lied to you on how much he sold his business for. And number two is you don't know the whole story on how Joe sold his business, what the terms were, and what was included in the sale. So it's really difficult at times just to say your business is worth what Joe's is. And then there's the owner benefit methodology, or what we call seller's discretionary earnings. And this is what the methodology that Sunbelt and most business brokers focus on. And what seller's discretionary earnings is figuring out to a dollar amount how much money the business meant to you as the owner. So this is not just your bottom line income profits. It's not what just you paid yourself from a salary standpoint. It's both of those things plus any other expenses you run through the business, plus any add backs like depreciation, amortization, and any other personal expenses that you might run through your business. For example, if you pay your health care through your business. So we're going to add up all of those items, and that's your seller's discretionary earnings. And once we have that, then we're going to apply a multiple to that number. Now, the multiples vary. They vary within the appliance repair industry. They vary by company size. They vary by a lot of different factors. Typically in appliance repair, it's 1.5 to 2.5 times your seller's discretionary earnings is going to be the price of your business. But again, each business is unique. And we've seen appliance repair businesses sell for higher multiples than 2.5, okay? Because, it just depends on the attributes of your business. So, one of the questions I always ask sellers is your business average? If it's average, you're going to fall in that 1.5 to 2.5. If you got some extraordinary things in your business, you're probably going to be above that range. So I will say, though, price is not just about a function of financial data. Multiples are going to vary based, again, on unique factors to your business. And that kind of stuff includes your assets, your inventory, your market position, and a host of other factors that we're not going to get into today. But I wanted to give you this refresher on how businesses are valued, because I think it's important to understand that when we show you some of the information we're going to talk about as we navigate this inflationary market. So let's talk about the current resales market. The bad news is, if you're looking to sell your business in the near future, the market has slowed. It has slowed down a little bit. But I will tell you that the number of businesses that we ended up selling in 2022, the number of businesses that sold in the general marketplace in 2022 was still greater than 2020, which was, of course, the COVID year, but also greater than last year. So 2022 was a little bit down from our record years of 2018 and 2019. So people look at the recent history and go, up 2022, 2020, 2021, they're nowhere near what 2018 and 2019 were. 2018 and 19 were record years. But when you put it on a graph, which I'm going to show you here in a minute, you'll see 2022 has actually showed that it was still a really good time to sell a business. I received this graph from bizbuysell.com. They're one of the largest aggregators of small business resales in the country. So as you can see, we have, 2022 is still really good numbers. Yes, it's not like 2018, a quarter three of 2018 and some of the quarters of 2019, but 2022 had a lot of quarters that were over 2020, over 2021. So, yep, it slowed a little bit, but it's still really strong. And there's still a lot of businesses that are being bought and sold on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. All right. So there's some good news there regarding, the actual number of businesses being sold. There's also good news when it comes to the multiples that people are paying for these businesses, according to BizBuySell. If you look at that orange line at the top, that is the average cash flow multiplier, or the average multiplier of sellers' discretionary earnings of all businesses sold through the last basically 4.5 years. And look at that line. it is relatively flat at that 2.5 times mark. Yeah, it was a little below there, in 18. It got above the line for a while, but now it's back down at it. But notice there's very little variation. And remember, we've had some really, really wild scenarios as far as business landscapes here in the last couple of years. Look at the COVID year of 2020. Look at what happened to the multiples. They dipped slightly, but then they rebounded really, really fast. And again, as the interest rates in 2022 started, going up, you notice that the number of sales slowly inched downward. I mean, not the number of sales, the multiple slowly inched downward, but it's not a dramatic drop. So I think this is really important for sellers to understand that as we navigate uncertain times, and we've navigated a lot of uncertain times really in the last 22 years. If you go back to 9/11, 9/11 to 2001, and then you look at the 21 years that we've done since then, 9/11, caused an economic crisis in this country. 2008, 2009, we had a flat recession. I mean, it was a big one. Right? It was the biggest ones we've had. And then we had the boom times of 16, 17, and 18, and then we're hitting this with this inflation, and we're seeing these interest rates rise. But through it all, the amount of the money, the multiple that sellers will receive for their business from buyers has remained relatively constant. It doesn't vary. And so I think, again, that's really important to point out to you guys. If you're thinking about selling your business, I think you're still going to be in really good shape. Now, the one thing that I think is really, making sellers nervous about selling and making buyers nervous about buying, of course, is the cost of capital, right? And, this graph here cut off in 2021. And so if we add 2022 to it at the very end, you're going to see it's going to go back up to, probably, 8 or 9%. But I point this out to you because this goes all the way back to 1955. And if you look at this basically 67-year history of what the cost of capital typically is, you will see that we're not in any unprecedented terms as far as interest rates go. As a matter of fact, typically over a period of time, interest rates are going to be in that 6 to 9% range. What's really messing with our minds right now, and when I say our minds, I'm talking about both buyers and sellers' minds, is we've just had this unbelievable run of low interest rates ever since really the crash of 2009. And so we've seen these interest rates hover below 6%, below 5% for many, many years. That is almost unprecedented. So it's really easy for us to say, oh my gosh, now interest rates are up to 7 or 8 or 9%. And that's just crazy compared to where we were. But from a historical perspective, it's right where we typically are. And yeah, it costs more money for borrowers to buy right now, but it's not like they're, mortgaging their whole future because of the high interest rates. We're not in 1980 when those interest rates climbed to almost 20%. It's not like that. We're in normal average interest rate times now. It's just that they're so much higher than they were from a perspective standpoint in the last couple of years. So, 2022 has been kind of meteoric as far as the prime rate goes. I mean, we started the year down at 3.25%, and we ended the year with our last interest rate that went up just last week. We're going to end the year at 7.5%. So we saw a 4% increase in the prime rate over the last 9 months. And again, that's a shock. And that makes people wonder, is now the right time to sell? Is now the right time to buy? But again, I want to point out to you that while it's expensive for buyers to buy right now, that expense is definitely more expensive as far as what it was 9 months ago, 2 years ago. From a comparative, historical standpoint, we are not in any kind of uncharted waters. So what happens when the interest rates go up? Well, obviously the loan costs go up, and thus buyers, they're going to want to go lower on sales price, because if you look at a 10-year loan at 5.5% interest, if you're going to, do a $500,000 business loan, the total interest paid on that loan at 5.5% is $150,000. And you contrast that to now being at 9%, and the total interest paid is $260,000. Now, that's, $110,000 difference that is spread out over a course of 10 years. So it's basically $11,000 a year. If you're buying a $500,000 business, typically $11,000 does not make or break the deal. Okay. But buyers are going to look at the cost of capital and they're going to go, well, it cost me more money. So therefore I'm going to go ahead and lower my offer a little bit. And again, we've seen that, but we haven't seen it, be as dramatic as possible because the sales prices are still staying good, are still staying strong. So if what you're looking at here is the asking price of the businesses are in blue, and the actual selling price of the businesses are in orange. And again, we're still getting really good prices for businesses right now. The median price in quarter 3 2000 is still real strong. Sir, do you have a question?
Yeah, they can't see your graphs. I've been trying to chat with you.
Oh, really?
They can't see the graphs. I've had a few texts.
Can you see the PowerPoint display?
I just see page 1. Like current market challenges for sellers.
Wow. All right, let me get out and just see.
There, now they're up.
Okay, let me just go into back in this and see if you can see this. I'm sorry, guys.
You might want to hit like the, I don't know, you can't see my screen. The presentation mode. There you go. Perfect. They're big now.
You can see them?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go back a little bit. I think we need to go back a little bit just to see so you can see the graphs that I talked about because I have 4 good graphs here. So I apologize. I won't spend a lot of time on them. This was the graph that shows the number of businesses sold recently over the last 5 years. So you can see 2022 pretty strong numbers. Again, not 2018 or 19 strong, but very strong compared to the last 3 years. This was the graph that I really wanted to, I spent some time on, and that orange line at the top shows the average SDE multiple that we talked about earlier, the multiple of, your owner benefit. That orange line shows how consistent it's been even from 2018 through 2022. Okay. Yeah, it's coming down a little bit right now again, but it's staying relatively consistent. And we've seen this over time, guys, all the way back to 2001 when we had 9/11, back to 2008 when we had the great crash. The multiple doesn't change that much. It's not what changes. So that's good news, if you're thinking about selling the business in the marketplace today. And then this is the historical cost of capital that I talked about. So this goes back to some 60 years. And again, you can see that, 2022 is going to see that line at the end there go up even further, but it's not unprecedented in any way, shape, or form. It's more like the average cost of capital over the last 60 years. We've just been spoiled. We've been spoiled for the last 5 or 6 years, or even longer, 10 years, with the low cost of capital. The government is now making that correction. And it's tough to overcome. I mean, buyers are looking at it going, hey, it's going to cost me more money. And it is, but it shouldn't be enough to make them decide not to buy a business. So I showed this chart. This is the recent cost of capital. And again, we've had a 4.0 increase in the last 9 months. That's aggressive. They're really trying to curb the inflation by doing this, obviously. And, when you look at the numbers that matter, then again, a 10-year loan with a 3.5% interest rate hike is going to cost a buyer roughly $110,000 more over the life of that loan. But if you divide that up by 10 years, again, it's only $11,000 a year. And if someone's looking at buying a $500,000 business, $11,000 typically is not enough to get that offer to be pulled off the table. Okay. So again, we're in the last 20 years, we've only seen the average price drop by about 0.1 from a multiple standpoint. So really, really good news. Prices are steady. Prices have been steady even during COVID. So yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking for buyers and sellers right now. But I think once you think about it from a rational and historical perspective, I think cooler heads will prevail, and I think the market's going to stay very, very strong. So let's show an example here. Let's say your store has $200,000 in SDE, and it would typically sell for a 2.5 multiple. That price would be $500,000, right? If the multiple drops, down to 2.4, you're looking at a drop of $20,000 in price. So yeah, it's your money. I get it, but is it really enough for you to put off retirement? Is it really enough to put off, your next phase of your business plans by selling your business and maybe starting something else or doing something else? When you're talking about a $20,000 difference in price, it's just like the interest rate of on the buyer side, it costs them another $11,000. I just think it's not enough money to say I'm not going to go ahead and do this. So what can you do? I'm hoping that you've gotten the point loud and clear here that, I think the market is still very much viable, and I think it's going to be very viable through 2023. We might see another interest rate hike or two, but I'm hoping that those rates are going to really start moderating now and going to slow down. But from your end, it's important that you keep up your profits. Controlling expenses is paramount when you're in an inflationary time. And if you can control your expenses and you can keep that bottom line high and you can keep that seller's discretionary earnings high, the multiple is going to stay consistent. And therefore, you're going to get a consistent price. What typically happens to business owners in inflationary times is this. Their expenses go up. They don't control the expenses. They don't adjust the prices, et cetera. Their profits go down. And even though the multiple stays the same, their sales price goes down because their profits are down. So it's really important that you block and tackle in this environment, that you do whatever you can to keep your expenses under control, get your revenues as high as possible, and you are going to be able then to, if you can keep that profitability and that seller's discretionary earnings number consistent, the multiple will be consistent, and you'll be able to cash out for the same amount of money you thought you're going to be able to cash out a year or two ago, just because there won't be any changes. Now, if you're open to additional risk, I want you to consider seller financing. Now, for the last X number of years, 6 years, 7 years, the SBA has been a willing partner for business buyers. They've been lending money at record rates, and of course, the interest rates were super low. And so most sellers, when they were selling their business since 2014, they cashed out. They took the lump sum payment, and the buyer went and got a loan and paid them out. Okay. And because of that, a lot of sellers who are now thinking about selling, that's what they were just remembering, that, hey, Joe sold and he got all cash because they got a bank loan. Bob sold, he got all cash. Lisa sold, she got all cash, right? Well, with the change in interest rates, I think it's really important that you maybe at least analyze being part of the financing solution if you're going to sell your business. Because when it comes to seller financing, sure, there's risk, right? And the risk is that the buyer, takes your business and then runs it in the ground. You can take it back as a shell of itself. But there's ways to mitigate that risk. And if you can get comfortable with it, and you're okay with considering seller financing, the advantages of seller financing right now have never been better, because you're going to get a higher price through our recasting when you seller finance. You're going to get potential tax savings when you seller finance. But seller financing is also an income source. And that income source we're going to talk about on the next slide can be very, very valuable to you as in terms of, maybe not just getting back some of the money that would come to the drop of the sales price because the multiple dropped a little bit, but it's more than that on top of it. So as I move to the next slide, let me just show you this example. I mentioned the income source. So go back. We talked about the fact that the interest rate went up from 150 or from 4%, 150,000 now to $260,000 on a $500,000 loan. If you're the bank, if you're the one who's financing this transaction, all of that interest would now come to you. instead of going to the bank. And so if you sold your business for 500 grand and you did a seller financing note for the whole balance, and 10 years later that you were paid off every dollar, you didn't sell your business for 500 grand. You sold your business for $760,000. So we talked about the drop of 1% of the SDE multiple, translates to $20,000 to $40,000 in price. But we're saying with seller financing, you can get $100,000 to $200,000 back. And so it's really something that everybody should consider if you're looking to get out here in the next few years as the interest rates remain high. Again, got to be comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable with the risk of seller financing, obviously it's not for you. But for buyers who are comfortable, for sellers who are comfortable, for sellers who really believe their business is set up for long-term, long-term growth, long-term sustainability, and they trust that the buyer that they're selling it to, seller financing is a way for you to absolutely slam dunk maximizing the value of your business when you go to sell it. So that is my presentation. I'm not going to spend any much time on who we are. I think you guys know that Sunbelt has been part of United Servicers now for about 7 years. As far as recommended business brokerage, we're here to help you guys. If you have any questions about preparing your business for sale, pricing your business for sale, maybe you already have a buyer you're talking to and just want to, bounce some ideas off us. That's what I'm here for. So feel free to give me a call at any time. Send me an email. We're a resource for you guys. We love to educate. We love to help. So with that, Sarah, I'll turn it back to you. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat or if anybody has raised their hand that they want to ask a verbal question, but I'll be glad to take some questions at this point in time. The first question is there a noticeable seasonal swing to appliance repair companies getting listed for sale? I'm going to say no. I think there might be some slight variations from quarter to quarter, from season to season. But when you consider that most businesses when they go to market, the average time to sell a business is just about 8 months right now. So even if you listed the business, let's say in the summer, odds are you're not going to be selling the business until the spring of next year. So you're gonna go through 3, maybe even 4 seasons anyways. So I really don't see a big difference in the number of businesses being listed in any different season, and I certainly don't see any big differences in the number of businesses being sold in any particular season, if that makes sense. I think you're muted, Sarah.
I said no more questions. You must have done a really good job.
Well, I just feel bad those graphs weren't up when I was talking the first time, so I apologize. That was I had no idea that they weren't coming through for whatever reason, so I'm sorry that happened. But yeah, look, I like I said, I really appreciate the opportunity, and like I said, if anybody has any questions that they want to talk privately, give me a call, and I'll be glad to answer.
Perfect. And Terry's email address, if anyone wants to write it down, is shown on the screen right now. tkelm@sunbeltnetwork.com.
And of course, I'll be at ASTI too. So if anybody's got some questions, 6 weeks from now, you guys can talk to me live because I'll be there.
Awesome. And somebody did just have a question. How is the Chicago market for selling the business?
Chicago market is really, really strong. The bigger markets, the one advantage the bigger market has is population, i.e. there's potentially a lot of buyers for any given business. And really, at the end of the day, getting any seller the right price and the best terms for the business comes down to one thing and one thing only, and that is having a lot of people interested in your business. The more people that want your business, the better off you're going to be from a term standpoint, from a price standpoint. So when you have a business in a marketplace like Chicago, we typically can drive a lot of buyers to every listing that we have. So that type of thing plays really well. If your business is in a rural area, population 5,000. It's a tougher sale, and usually it's going to sell for a less price because there's just not the population that's going to compete for that listing. But in a market like Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles, we're usually able to get multiple people interested in every business that we list.
And John just asked, are there noticeable institutional buyers in this space?
There are. There are noticeable institutional buyers. That being said, those buyers tend to be very picky. They want certain things in the businesses that they're buying. And it's been my what I've seen firsthand is many of your businesses and people on this call don't qualify for what they're looking for. And I'm not meaning to slight anybody, but they have certain things that they want, number of trucks, number of employees, customer counts, whatever it might be. And that's great. If you built out a large enterprise, those institutional buyers may be a really good option for you. But I've had, I had an institutional buyer basically call me and say, hey, can you show me, the listings that you had in the industry? And of course, I had a few from, my contacts with United Servicers, and they didn't want any of them. They just didn't meet their criteria. So there are some good institutional buyers out there. They've got a lot of money. They've got a lot of resources. They're looking to actively purchase, but they have a very stringent, if you will, checklist of what they're looking for in each business they're going to purchase.
Do you see Matt's question?
I'm bringing it up right now. So.
Okay, actually, before we move to Matt, Michael had one more question. Would adding vehicles a year before the sale help or hurt prospects?
So, it's a great question. And I think really what the answer to that question is, I'll say two things about that. Number one is, if you're going to add a vehicle, if you're going to keep your business and you're going to add a vehicle next year, then add a vehicle next year. Because even if you go to market next year, there's no guarantee the business is going to sell. So you need to continue to run your business like you're going to own your business, even when you're listing your business for sale. So does that mean go out and spend $1 million? No. But if you were going to be, if your thought plan was, hey, if I wasn't selling this, I need to add another truck, add the other truck. You want to continue to maximize your opportunities to grow the revenues, to grow the profits. So yes, I like that. The other thing is, it all depends also, as far as, how you're going to, are you going to lease them? Are you going to buy them outright, et cetera? I mean, how you finance that transaction is going to be, part of that question as well. But my general thought process is, guys, you got to continue to run the business like it's not going to sell, even if you're going to market, because if it doesn't sell, you want to be in a position where when you do go back to market, hopefully it'll sell that time. So I would definitely consider adding things that if you think that was the right thing for your business. As far as the Matt's question of, do service contractors increase value? The answer is yes. And this gets back to my discussion early on about what plays into the multiple, right? How does that multiple determine? And one of the things in your industries is, what's the service contract? What's the recurring revenue look like, right? The more service contracts you have, the higher the recurring revenue you have, the higher the multiple. Buyers love that. Buyers love to look at a business and be able to forecast, wow, I know for a fact I'm going to have this many dollars coming in, in January, February, March, et cetera. So that does play into a higher multiple. So again, that's where, I gave you a very broad range when I said the multiples are between 1.5 to 2.5. Stores that, or I should say, businesses that have more of those type of things, recurring revenue, service contracts, they're going to be closer to that 2.5 as opposed to ones that don't have that, which are going to be closer to the 1.5. Great questions, by the way. Thank you.
And again, please feel free to reach out to Terry or myself, and I can forward questions on to Terry if anyone has them. And for those that are watching the replay, again, Terry's contact information is on the screen right now. If that's it. Oh.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate it. Happy holidays. We'll see you guys all in San Antonio in about 6 weeks.
We will be there. And yes, George, Terry will be at ASTI. Awesome.
We'll see
Thank you, everybody. Have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Sarah.
Have a good one.